Okay, so then we've got a bunch of folks here who've been in the industry for a long time, and they're all here to share the experience, the mistakes they did, the things they did well, so that all of us can learn from them. The next talk is titled Game Production 101. Okay, to tell us more, I'd like to call upon Yogesh Gaikwad from Nazara.
Hello. Hi guys. Good morning. Yeah. So before we start, I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm Yogesh. I am General Manager of Game Studios at Nazara. So a little bit about myself, about my journey in this industry. So I've been part of this industry for close to 20 years. I've started at a time where there were hardly 4 to 5 games companies in India. And I played multiple roles, starting from QA, then moving into design, then production, to being a studio manager. And also I've worked across different genres of games as well as different platforms. I've worked on PC, mobile, console, AR, VR, as well as different genres of games, be it PC, or rather racing, strategy, MMOs. And today we are going to talk about games production. Since you guys are students or young companies who are starting their journey in game production or game development, you guys might not be aware as well that what a producer does. So most of you who are building games, do you know what a producer does? Any of you? Or have a role defined as a producer in your team, even if your team is small? Good. So probably I'll go into details as to what a producer does. So basically, in terms of, if you guys are aware of the game development process, so the traditional process that is there consists of pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production is where you create different documentation, create the budgets, plans, schedules about the game. Production is where you actually build the game, where all the art gets made, the code goes into the game, the sound, music, everything is integrated and you launch the game. Then comes the post-production phase, wherein you ship additional expansions, DLCs, or even you do the live ops process in this step. Or now with the advent of mobile, where most studios have a very small development life cycle, wherein you build a MVP or a prototype, then you release it in a small set of countries called soft launch, then you track certain KPIs, refine those KPIs, and then do a global launch. So one person who is involved with start to end from concept to release is a producer. So he owns the entire game development process, be it maintaining budgets, timelines, and also ensuring that the game is a compelling experience for your end users. Also, in terms of the role itself, the role varies in certain areas or depending on the needs of the project, depending on the scope of the project, depending on the size of the development team, or even in terms specific needs of certain game companies or studios. So in some studios, he may be a pure project manager where he maintains or tracks tasks, maintains timelines and budgets, or works with the designers or product folks to ensure what goes in the game or not. Similarly, in other games, other companies, he may be sort of a game vision guardian, that he ensures that whatever is the vision of the game, it aligns with whatever the team goals that the team had set forth. That okay, we want to build the game of a certain quality or certain standards. So he sort of safeguards that vision. Or with the advent of agile development methodology, these days he can also be a product owner, where he defines and drives the scope of the project and drives the sprint to completion. Also, there may be certain specific specializations that a producer takes depending on the scope of work that the company is involved in. In some cases, it may be art production house where the person responsible would be called an art producer. If the game is to be ported to different languages, there would be a specific person who would be responsible for the localization, or would be called a localization producer. If it's a multi-platform game across different platforms, PC, console, mobile, then you will need different tools to support that development. So in that case, you may need a tools producer to do that specific role. And especially with mobile, where you need to release updates very frequently, daily, weekly. So that process is called live service or live ops. So a person may be dedicated to oversee the whole process around it. So to go into detail as to what does a producer do on a day-to-day basis. So the key responsibilities that the producer does on a day-to-day thing is project management. Primarily setting milestones, maintaining the budget, as well as ensuring that the project is on track. Also, the other responsibility that a producer has is budgeting and resource management. It may involve, say, creating the budgets, because you need to be cognizant of the fact that how much money you have and how much money you spend, and also spend on the resources that you need effectively to maximize the efficiency. You may have a certain budget, but if you overshoot, you may not be able to finish the game. Also, in certain cases, if you're working on a big game, you may have to work with certain external partners. So negotiate with external vendors, or create some licensing agreements if you're working with some IP. And also optimize costs. So you would also have to keep track of how much you're spending and whether it's in budget or not. Then comes team coordination. On a day-to-day basis, he'll have to work with different teams, be it art, development, QA, sound, music. Everything, he needs to ensure that everybody has what they need, facilitate the communication between them, and ensure that everybody knows that what they are trying to do or achieve in the game. So everybody is aware of their role in the game and what are their responsibilities to deliver a compelling experience. Then comes the risk mitigation, right? So most people, when they start building games, things go wrong. So one of the key things that a producer also needs to be cognizant of, identify risks that arise when you start building games. That today you're building something in terms of something in the art style goes wrong, or something in the way the code has been written goes wrong. So you need to identify that and also come up with strategies to mitigate those risks. So it may sometimes be reallocate the resources, or even change the project scope or timelines, or even make changes to the entire scope of the project. If you're going too broad or if you're going too short, change the scope of the project. Then comes stakeholder management or stakeholder communication, wherein you being the person, you are responsible to speak to or provide feedback to the team and certain stakeholders, be it the management, be it the investors, or even publishers in certain cases. Also, you need to address their concerns, provide feedback from them to the team, from the team to them, and ensure that everything status quo is maintained. Also, this is one thing that most studios don't do, is sort of market research and analysis, wherein you need to be aware of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, or rather what's happening in the industry, what are the trends, current industry trends, or who is your target audience, and even what are the best practices in the industry. If you are aware of that, you can make informed decisions as to what would be the best design decisions that you would want for your game to succeed, or what would be the best marketing strategies or the best distribution channels. So for example, if you're building in India, Android would be your first choice, because India is primarily an Android major country. Then comes about game vision, right? So the producer usually is responsible to provide input and guidance on the creative direction of the game. So he'll have to work with different teams to ensure that whatever goals were set by the team, that we want to build a racing game or we want to build a strategy game with these certain benchmarks or parameters. So you will need to provide guidance and input on whether that vision is being upheld or the goals that were set by the team are on track. Then since most of you guys are students or young studios, so you may be wondering that how do I become a producer? What are the key skills or core skills that are needed to become a producer? So there are two aspects to it. So either you are absolutely new or starting out in your career, or you have some experience in a different industry and you want to move to the games industry. So in case of you are a beginner, ideally what studios look for is you need to have some sort of experience with game development. So usually what happens is either you get hired as a fresher or you worked in the games industry in a different discipline, be it art, QA or certain other role, dev, and then you understand what goes in building a game on a day-to-day basis, and then you can move to become a producer. Same thing is about what the person who is going to be hired. So people will look for people who are eager to learn, because while building a game, there are multiple facets and aspects that a person needs to learn. So that hunger to learn should be there. Similarly, since you will be managing the project, so you need to know basic project management tools. You may not need to know in depth, but at least some basic overview of what are the tools, how do they work at a very high level, be it Jira, Confluence, or open source tools like Notion or Monday. And since you will be dealing with a lot of people problems as well, because when different teams work together, there is bound to be friction. So people look for empathy and the interpersonal skills in dealing with those kinds of problems. So those would be some things that studios would look for. And the biggest thing that is passion for games. That if you want to build games, you need to know games. Just playing games is not enough. You need to be aware of what are the industry trends, what are the things that are happening around you in the industry, what is the competitive landscape in your country or in your region. So that helps. Now, if you are an experienced person who has spent some time in a different industry and want to move to the games industry in a production role, so the things that studios would look for is you need to have some sort of a project or a program management experience. So if you're working in the software industry or some other industry, if you work with apps or other SaaS products or software products, so if you have some experience with managing those, that would help. And then since this would not be an entry-level position, so the other skills that will be looked at is leadership and management at a bigger level, be it time management, resource management, risk management. And since this role has both project and people management aspects, communication and people skills are key. And also, you will be working with multiple executive producers on this, and also multiple games or platforms across the division. So now coming to this role, so what are the things that a producer does in India? There are certain stereotypes or certain mistakes that people do on a day-to-day basis. So even you guys, when you're building games, so even if you are a small team, one person may be tracking the project. He may not be aware that he is doing that role as a producer. So especially in India, because there are a lot of cultural nuances and certain interpersonal relationships play a key role in our culture, the role of the producer has different layers or aspects in India. So one common misconception that we have in India, that is, producer is the boss of the project, that I am the manager, I can boss around people or tell people that do this, do that. But that's not the ideal thing to do. Ideally, a producer is more of a facilitator who sort of removes roadblocks and ensures that everybody in the team has everything that they need, because everyone is working towards the same goal. We all want to build good games. Then he needs to act as a bridge, basically work across different teams. So there will be people across different teams, be it art, dev, QA. So he needs to act as a bridge and provide communication and coordination across teams. So everybody knows what they're responsible for or what their role in the game is to ensure that we deliver a quality product. Then also there is this thing where people may not understand technical jargon. So basically tomorrow a marketing person would come to an art person and say, I need a 2x2 matrix. So that person may not understand that what is a 2x2 matrix or why is it needed. So it's the producer's job to make sure that he solves the problem for the other person who doesn't understand the technical jargon by why is it needed and why is it important, and also explain how to do it. Also, the other thing about producers in India is that people think that I'm from art, so I know everything. But ideally, a producer needs to be sort of a jack of all trades. He needs to know everything, or a high level overview of everything, be it art, be it dev, be it QA, or other disciplines. Because he'll have to work with everybody. He needs to understand what they speak or what they want to convey. Then the other thing is about the work culture or the work environment itself, that whoever is responsible for the team needs to be aware of what's happening with the team, be aware of the emotional well-being of the team, provide a positive work environment for the team to make sure that the team morale is high. Because usually when we tend to ship games, we tend to rush. So that causes crunch and burnout among the team. And whoever is responsible needs to be cognizant of the team health, because that helps in terms of the overall velocity of the game. Also, the other thing that is there, that is us being in India, we tend to sit on problems and procrastinate a lot. And being a good producer, you need to be proactive, not reactive. You shouldn't be waiting for problems or things to go wrong. You should be proactive to identify problems and solve them, because eventually it will affect the timelines and delivery of the project. Also, there is this thing that usually we are very afraid to say no. So that causes that the higher management says that game has to be shipped. That causes undue pressure among the team. So a good producer is somebody who conveys realistic timelines, or doesn't hesitate to go back and say that, okay, no, this is the quality benchmark. If you don't give me time, I won't be able to ship in quality or time. So that is a thing that the producer is also responsible for. And also, when there are unexpected or undue demands from others about certain timelines or certain deliverables, he should be able to push back and shield the team, not expose the team, because we've been told, so let's work 7 days a week or 12 hours a day. He needs also to be cognizant of the burnout or the crunch aspect of the team. So this is what primarily the role of producer entails in India. So now, over my journey of building games, I'd like to share some of my learnings and the mistakes that I made in my development journey. So probably that may help you. Those are very rookie mistakes that I did. So hopefully it may help you in some way. So this was a game that I built you can say it was my first game that I built. So it was a cricket game based on Sachin Tendulkar. It was supposed to be a very simple game built in a timeline of 2 weeks with a very small team of 1 developer and 1 artist. And it was fairly early. So this game was built way back in 2005. So at that time, it was still the time of feature phones. So there were no app stores like Google Play and Apple App Store. So that time we used to distribute through telecom vendors like Airtel, Vodafone. And when we began production, many things went wrong. So one of the first thing that went wrong is we overshot our timeline, because it was supposed to be finished in 2 weeks, but we almost spent four weeks building it, because we had to optimize the game for low-end handsets. At that point of time, you had handsets with a very small screen size, and that point of time, the phone's internal memory was 128 KB, 256 KB. So it was a task to get it ported. So at that point of time, had to rush and add in extra people to get it done. And since it was my first game, probably you may be also making a similar mistake, that there is no documentation. Since we are all friends making games, okay, I won't have any documentation. I'll build something, I'll show it to you. See this. This is how. Is it looking nice? Or when there is a bug, there is no formal bug report, or there is no documentation in terms of updates to the design doc. So if there is a bug, I'll show it to the developer sitting beside me, right? See, is this looking correct, or this is the behavior. So because of this ad hoc style of working, many things went wrong. It caused delays because there was no way to track what and how went wrong, and whether it was fixed or not fixed. And also when we released the game didn't do that well. So my learnings from this were that, see, most people don't realize, or rather, since you are building your first game, most of the games, 90% of the games are never shipped or finished. So whenever you start building games, many things will go wrong. So you need to be flexible enough to adapt and learn from those mistakes. And whatever mistakes that you make on your first game, use the learnings from those mistakes onto the next games that you make. The other mistake that I mentioned is no documentation. Always document stuff. Be it the smallest of things. When you send a build, send release notes. Usually people write design docs and it's never updated. So what's the design doc first version versus what's in the game eventually never gets translated back into the design doc. So that causes many issues, that there is no trackability. If some new person comes into the project, he will not understand that what is in the game versus what was planned or targeted for. The other thing was always do market research in terms of figuring out what is the game that you're building, what is your target audience, what are the competitors doing. So one of the reason for games failure for me was that didn't do enough market research, and also was priced at a different price point that probably shouldn't have been done. Also, the other mistake that I did is, because this was a game that I wanted to build, because I thought, okay, Sachin is a good batsman, I want to build a quick game, so I'll build a game that involves tapping the ball. So that was me and my friends what we wanted to build, but that essentially doesn't mean what the end users want. So always think from the perspective of end users. Also identify your target audience. So don't get stuck to ideas that, okay, I want to build this, so I'll build this. But eventually when you will ship the game, there will be no takers for that game. Moving on to the second game that I built. So this was a game based on a popular TV show called Hole in the Wall. So this was the first time I was working with a license. There was a liaison team, and also it needed localization. So again, it was at a startup where I had a small team, 2 developers, 2 artists, and outsourced QA. And also, as it happens in a startup, one person has to play multiple roles. So I was also the designer, I was also the producer on the project, and I was also doing a bit of QA. And again, compared to the last game, this game still had a fairly relaxed timeline of 4 months. And when we began production, multiple things went wrong. So me being the designer, I was wanting certain features to be implemented in a certain way. So that caused a lot of changes. And sort of me wearing multiple hats, my designer persona overshadowed my producer persona, wherein I thought, okay, no, we need to make it better. We need to make it better. And that caused many delays, because when you're working with external parties, be it licensors or liaison teams, that there is some time delay needed for those approvals to happen. And if you keep making frequent changes, there will be burnout among the team, where you will be in a constant rush to finish the game. Also, the other problem that came across for me during the production cycle was that I had to commit to certain timelines, because I was under pressure from the liaison team that, okay, this is the time when you need to deliver. So I didn't get to consult the right people, be it the developers or the artists. Then eventually the game was delayed, had to add additional resources to make sure it gets shipped on time. So few learnings for me here were, that when you have to commit for timelines for others, always factor in their capabilities. When you're unsure of people's capabilities, you shouldn't think, okay, I can do it in 2 weeks, so the other person will also do it in 2 weeks. Always ask them or try to get their buy-in, because that will help you get a quality output. And basically, when you're building games that have certain hard timelines, always try to build in some flexibility in the product or the project plan, because you will need that flexibility to accommodate changes, because there will be changes. And when you work with external partners or external companies, make sure that you set clear standards or clear updates that, okay, this is the time it would take, and the communication is clear both ways. And also, when you're building a game, be pragmatic, or certain feature, be pragmatic as to what effect a certain game will have or a certain feature will have, right? See, in my case, I wanted certain thing to be implemented in a certain way. So if you're building, say, a cricket game where you need to add a cap to a player, but on a phone screen, the impact that a cap will have won't be much. It won't be visible that much. And if you spend a lot of time, it's sort of waste of resources, and you are chasing perfection that won't impact the quality of the game. Then coming to the last game that I built, or rather it was my first console game that I built. So it was a kart racing game for Nintendo Wii. So again, this time I had a fairly large team and a fairly large time or fairly extended timeline to build the game. So this game also had a 4-player split screen multiplayer game. And then there were 6 different themes. So if you guys are familiar with Mario Kart, it was a clone of Mario Kart. So it had 6 different themes with 5 tracks, 12 characters, 20 cards. Then when we began production, at the time when we began production, we started the usual way that, okay, let's start with 1 track at a time. So we started building picked up a single theme and started building all 5 tracks in that theme. After a while, we figured out, since it was still early days, it was the time where the games were not digital. It was still a physical CD, DVD based model. So we used to retail through certain stores in US. So the retailer said that if you want the game to be available for the holiday season, you need to have it shipped and available on the shelves by September. So suddenly 3 months of my production timeline got sort of cut short. And also at that point of time, we were working with Unity. So Unity, I believe it was version 2 or 1.8, and it was not very mature. So there were many problems because of early version of the tech. So at that point of time, we had to leverage a lot of help from industry forums, people who we knew in the industry, or even our connects with Nintendo and Unity to solve the problem. So that also took additional time. And because our timeline was cut short, panic hit that, okay, we need to build the game quickly. So everybody was rushing to do things, and still things were not coming along. There were many problems in terms of what we were going too broad. We were trying to build a lot of things in a short time period. So we observed this for a time, still things didn't change. Then after a point of time, we said, okay, nothing is changing. Let's go back to the drawing board and change the entire plan. So we decided that, okay, let's not go too broad, and instead of building 5 tracks, let's build 1 track and most of the features that we want in the game, and go with that approach. And also, there were a lot of people in the team whose skills we were not utilizing to the optimal level. So in our team, we had an animator who could texture a bit. There was an environment artist who could animate a bit. So we decided to leverage the interdisciplinary skills to make sure that we get the maximum efficiency out of people's time and being also cognizant of the fact that, okay, we need to ship in time. And due to that, after that, we started to build this MVP or vertical slice of the game, and it came out pretty well. And that did wonders to the morale, team morale, and the confidence that, okay, we can deliver. And then we released the game, and in Nintendo, there is a thing called as a certification. So when you submit on any console, there is a certification cycle involved. So in case of Nintendo, there are 3 certification stages: pre-lot check, and lot check 2. So we cleared our certification in lot check 1 itself. So now the learnings for me and my team on this project while working on this were, when things go wrong and you don't see a lot of changes happening when you're doing small things, it's always good to go back to the drawing board and start over again or reconfigure your plans. The other thing is, whatever your high risk items, always try to do them early so you can de-risk the project, because you know, okay, what quality can be achieved on, or what impact those high risk features will have on the game, and how effectively you can counter that. Also, when you're building games, always try to build a vertical slice or MVP of the game. That you can identify a lot of issues when you do that, be it bugs or certain risks that are there with certain features that you build. Also, the other thing, when you're responsible for a team, you're responsible for shipping a game, is that you're not just responsible for the deliveries, but also ensure that you are responsible for the team. So you need to be also responsible for the well-being of the team. And when the team is happy, or rather the team morale is high, the team confidence is high, it does wonders to the output that the team will produce. So make sure that the team morale is high. Go for small wins instead of chasing a big win. If a small win gives you confidence, you can take on a bigger win in the next sprint or the next cycle. And when you're going to build a game, don't go too broad. Always start small and start incrementally building things. So these were the few learnings from my third and the last example that I have. So thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any. See, ideally, first thing is that you would identify a certain set of goals that you are working towards, right? That is the first aspect, that everybody is on the same page, that we are working towards this goal. When you are working towards that goal, the team itself will be working to deliver the game to the best output or the best quality that you want. And at times when things don't go right, so you need to reassess what is going wrong, or in certain cases even certain small things help the team in terms of certain additional help, or you get stuck. To motivate them, you bring in a mentor or you get external help. So that helps. So there are different tools. You either use Jira or Confluence, and depending on your role. So if you are a producer, that usually producers are not involved in multiple projects unless you are an executive producer or a production director. So if you are at that level, you'll have, it's more of a coaching and mentoring job. But if you are a producer, you will be focused on a certain area or a certain game or certain aspects of the game.
Thank you, Yogesh. So that was the second talk. I hope it was good. I hope it helped gain some valuable insights on the mistake that you shouldn't do and the stuff that you should definitely be doing. Thanks, Yogesh.